Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Really happy to see you all. Kenny, welcome back. It's been a while. Really happy to see you. So today we are going to cover some very profound teachings from Sri Krishna. And before we begin, I'll first say the prayers to Guru and God. Om Agyanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalake Chakshuru Militamene Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So, although in the group, although we said we are going to cover 2.45 to 2.50, the more I was going through these notes, I realized that there is a lot to cover. And the focus is not how much we cover in a session, the focus should be how much we are able to internalize. So I'm going to divide this into two sessions. Today we will just do 2.45, 46, and 47. And in the next session, we can cover the remaining three. So before we begin, I will play the Guru Mantra as well, and then I will play the shlokas.
Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha.
Hare Krishna. So you all have the shlokas in front of you, I hope. We shared it in the group. So it's going to be 2.45 to 2.47. I'm going to play now.
Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna Nirbandho Nitya Satvastho Niryoga Kshema Atmavan Yavanartha Udapane Sarvatah Samplutodake Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanatah Karmanyevadhikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana Ma karma phala heturbhu ma te sangosva karmani.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So let's dive deep into this nectar of wisdom. So again, let us recollect where we left Arjuna. Arjuna sitting in his chariot, he is in a state of paralytic grief. The mighty Gandiva no longer looking fearsome, it is lying meekly next to him. And Shri Krishna is continuing his divine instruction there. So if you pay attention, you will see that Shri Krishna, he's not offering him just words of comfort. Krishna here is diagnosing. He's diagnosing the root cause of Arjuna's suffering. And he is helping Arjuna see that the root cause of his suffering is his own ignorance of his own true nature, and his ignorance about the nature of action itself. Because what Arjuna is perceiving as compassion is actually delusion. What Arjuna thinks is righteousness is actually weakness, which is dressed in a noble clothing to look somehow, very noble. So here it's a re-education that is going on. Now Krishna, he is trying to shift Arjuna's consciousness, shift it from a limited result-oriented perspective into a universal process-oriented one. It's a very beautiful shift. And the more we can understand this, the more our life itself will transform, because we are talking about a transformation from result oriented to process oriented. It may feel a bit technical, but I will explain in depth. And this lesson that we are learning today, it is the foundation of Karma Yoga. It is the basis on which Karma Yoga is built upon. And we have to also understand that Krishna is not giving some quick tips or tricks to win that particular war. Krishna is offering wisdom that will help us win over our mind. That is what this lesson is all about. Now, have you ever heard any sloka in the Bhagavad Gita that says you have to hold the sword like this, or you have to throw the pike like this, or there's nothing like that. It's not about winning that battle. That battle is just an opportunity that Krishna is using to help us all win over our own mind. Extremely important. And if you remember, in the previous session we said that Krishna is teaching us how to engage in action without letting those actions create bondage for us. Who remembers the term Krishna used for that? What is that subject matter called? Yes, Deepaji?
Buddhi Yoga?
Okay, excellent. Excellent. So that's what Sri Krishna called as Buddhi Yoga. See, there is Sankhya Yoga, that's what chapter 2 was about, right? Sankhya Yoga is tightly related to Jnana Yoga. And then we have the theory about, action and all of that. But, Krishna comes up with his own philosophy and he's calling that as Buddhi Yoga. And what is Buddhi Yoga? If you want to make it very concise, the explanation, Buddhi Yoga is pretty much how to put theory into action in such a way that it does not create any bondage. Very beautiful, very holistic teaching. So he starts 2.45, very profound sloka. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhava Arjuna. And you see there are some powerful words that come after that. Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvasto Niryogakshema Atmavan. Now we will dissect this. What Krishna says, he is now teaching Arjuna. He is telling that why I am being so cautious about how I explain this verse. I'm going a bit slow here because this verse is one of the most misunderstood slokas in the Bhagavad Gita. A lot of people have, out of misunderstanding or out of half understanding, they have interpreted it in a very negative way. Why? Because here Krishna says that the most sacred scriptures, what are the most sacred scriptures he's talking about? The Vedas. And he's saying they primarily deal with the realm of the three gunas. And in later chapters, Krishna will go very deep into gunas, the science of guna. So, as a very quick introduction, everything in the universe, everything that we can see and perceive, they are made up of three gunas. Those gunas are tamas, rajas, and sattva. Tamas means darkness, ignorance. Rajas is passion. And sattva is truth. It is goodness. So Krishna here saying that the Vedas, they are all dealing with the subject matter of those three gunas. So when he says this, he's not trying to dismiss the Vedas. He's not rejecting the Vedas. He's just teaching Arjuna how to approach it with awakened eyes. He is helping Arjuna understand that all these Vedic scriptures, they are like ladders. They are ladders that help us go from tamas to rajas to sattva. And Krishna says the ladder is good. It has a purpose. But then the sky is better. And he says the self is the sky. And our goal is the sky. That is the teaching here. So we will go into more deep depth here. So how to rise above these gunas? That is where this sloka comes in. So he starts with Nirdvandvo. Dvandva means duality. Nirdandvo. Avoiding getting disturbed by those dualities. Have we read anything similar to that? Anybody remembers? As Krishna taught about not being disturbed by dualities. Yes, we have one person already nodding their head. We have two. Okay, few more. Yes, Sulataji?
Yeah, Matra Sparshesu Kaunteya.
Yes.
Shitoshna Sukha Dukkha.
Excellent. Excellent. Mata Sparshastu Kaunteya Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada. And then Agama Payino Anitya Stantitikshasva Bharata. So he's saying that they are all the contact of the senses with the sense objects. That's what is the whole game about. And he's saying Shitoshna, cold, heat, happiness, sadness. I think they're all Agama Paino, they come and go. Anityas, they are not permanent, they are temporary. Titikshasva, he's saying Titiksha, practice Titiksha. Try to tolerate all of them. That was his lesson on how to not get disturbed by those dualities. That's what is coming again here, Nirdvandvo. This is what Krishna calls as Samatvam. Samatvam is not just about looking calm. It's not like I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to do anything. But inside your mind there is a storm going on. That is not Samatvam. Samatvam is a inside job. Then he says, Nitya Sattvastu. He says, always be established in the Sattva Guna. How will that come? By constant practice, Abhyasa, using your Viveka, always choosing Shreya over Preya. We have discussed all of that. When you put it all to use, you will fulfill that aspect that Krishna is talking about. And then there is a very powerful term here, Niryoga Kshema. Later on, Krishna will talk about Yoga Kshemam. It will come later in the 9th chapter. Very few people, they recollect or they pay attention that that word has already come in the 2nd chapter first. The 2nd chapter, Krishna says, Niryoga Kshemam. So he says, yoga, in this context, yoga means to acquire, and kshema means to preserve, the efforts that are put to preserve. So it's our ego which is always busy acquiring. It wants to keep on acquiring things. And once we acquire things, what happens? The next, naturally what comes next? The fear of preserving it. If I acquire a lot of money, where do I keep it? Should I put it in stocks? Should I keep it in a fixed deposit? Should I buy bonds? Should I buy a house? Isn't it? So Krishna is telling Arjuna that you have to discipline your mind. Don't run behind. Don't let your mind run behind things. Don't let your mind always be obsessed about acquiring more and more. That is the first problem. The second problem, once you let your mind go on acquiring, then the next step is you're going to keep worrying of how to preserve it. It's an endless vicious cycle. And Krishna says that this whole cycle of acquiring and preserving, that is a manifestation of Rajoguna and Tamoguna. And once you are able to have a control over that, once you are able to moderate this, then you will be able to get into Sattva Guna. So first he says maintain Sattva Guna, and then he is giving us how we can get into the Sattva Guna. Krishna is not saying you should not have wealth, he's not saying you should not have a house, he's not saying, but what he's saying is don't let it become a compulsion. I have a small house, then my mind is very busy. I think I should have it's a 2 BHK is not enough. I need 3 BHK, and then you get a 3 BHK and then, tomorrow, 10 years from now, my kids may marry, they may have that child, I may need 2 more bedrooms. Okay, I will have a duplex. Then you have a duplex. That's not enough now. You're like, I need a jacuzzi in my house. You have a jacuzzi. That's not enough. I need a swimming pool, So that is what Krishna says. Your mind is never satisfied. It keeps running. And then what happens? Now you have such a big house. Now you are full of anxiety. Now you need 115 cameras, security cameras, you need alarms, you need state-of-the-art locks to keep the house locked. Isn't it? That is the anxiety of preserving. Why did that anxiety come? Because you let your mind run behind acquiring. Sometimes we want to acquire even more than what we need. That's the problem. It's a very funny joke I heard on the internet the other day. He's a very popular comedian, and he was saying, I live in a studio. Studio means it is smaller than a one bedroom. So there is just one room pretty much. And he says, I live in a studio, and you know what? Horror movies don't have an impact on me. It is because when there is any kind of a strange noise, I just have to turn my head and I have looked at my entire house. I'm not afraid where the noise is coming from because I can see the entire house. There is nothing anywhere, It's a joke, but that is the problem. But when we say I want to acquire, there are people who want a palace with 100 rooms, but how many rooms are you going to live in? Somebody very nicely said, they said that, people are very proud to say that I have a 10,000 square feet house. But how many square feet are they really living in? They are probably living in 100, 200 square feet. Who is living in the remaining 9,000 square feet? He says that is their ahankar. They need only 200 square feet to live, but their ahankar needs 9,000 more square feet. So let us pay attention how it actually messes our mind is the lesson Krishna is giving here. Very, very important lesson here. And then he says, Atmavan. Do focus on self-realization. The teaching here is that read the Vedas. Krishna never says don't read the Vedas. Read the Bhagavad Gita too. Very important. It's not about whether you should read the Bhagavad Gita. But the point is, what is the intent? Why are you reading the Bhagavad Gita? Are you reading it so that you can show off that, hey, I know 100 slokas, I can recite Sanskrit verses? Is that your intent? Then Krishna says you are missing the whole point. That is all he is saying. What is important is we need to understand the purpose of those scriptures. This is where we previously spoke about Nididhyasan. It's not enough to just read. You have to understand the purpose. So Krishna, he is now giving instruction to be Atmavan. That is what he says is important, established in the self. No, it is not just a theory, it's a lived reality. The Atman, as we have read previously in Sankhya Yoga, it is something that we don't have to search. The Atman is not something that you have to discover in the usual sense. It's not like you have to go on an expedition to find your soul. See, it is already there. It is already our true nature. The problem is not discovering our nature. The problem is getting rid of everything that comes in the way of that discovery. Now, it's a very beautiful and controversial also, as I said, metaphor that Krishna is using. Krishna says that all purposes that are served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So this is controversial only because it has to be understood in the right context. The problem is when people say, oh, Krishna says Vedas are just a well, or Vedas are not important. And that is when it becomes problematic. But that's not what Krishna is saying. If you actually pay attention, if you actually introspect, you will see it's a very beautiful and a very logical teaching that Krishna is talking about here. So, imagine what is the problem here. Why this becomes controversial. Imagine in olden days, these Pandits, their entire life is devoted to preserving and practicing the Vedic rituals. Their entire life is spent in memorizing, because in the olden days, they didn't write things down. This is how the Vedas were passed on from generation to generation. It was always by mouth. So people will recite, they will remember, and then they will pass it on. Like that, it happened for thousands of years. So there are this group of people who have been doing it all their life. And their identity now depends on that. They have a social status based on that. Now suddenly somebody comes and says, but Krishna said Vedas are not important. Now you can understand why it becomes a controversy now. Because what do you mean it's not important? I built my entire life around it. So that is why I'm taking a little more efforts to explain that is not what Krishna really meant. What Krishna is saying is very logical. So he is giving an example. Let us take the example of a well. In olden days, at least, every village will have at least one common well. I don't know if you have seen this TV serial of Shirdi Sai Baba serial, and you will see that in the beginning, many episodes, they will revolve around a well. There is a well, and the village folks are coming. They're fetching water from a well, and that is where a lot of discussions happen. They talk about what is going on in Shirdi, and whose house is doing whose household, what is going on, and all of that. So a well is not just for water. That well becomes a place for your social connection. It used to be the Facebook in olden days, was the community well, where everybody will come. So the well has a purpose. The well has a kind of importance for everybody. And people have taken water from the well for so many years. It has helped them during many droughts, and so on and so forth. Now, suddenly, a huge rain comes. It rains for months and months. Why do you think people dig a well? If you don't know, a well is usually dug in places which is far away from the river, because that's the easiest way to get water when you are not near a river. Because if you are close to a river, then it's really not a sensible thing to dig a well. Just go fetch water from the river, right? So now let us say this deluge happens, so much rains for months, and now suddenly there is water everywhere. There is a natural, stream of water, almost like a river, which is now flowing through the village. There are many lakes that are formed. There is water everywhere. Now does it still make sense for somebody to walk 20 minutes to the well, stand in line, stand in a queue, and then fetch water from that well, when they can take water right outside their house because there is a river flowing there? That is the point Krishna is making here. Krishna is not saying somehow the well is not important. Krishna is not saying somehow the well is not having a purpose. The well has a purpose, but the purpose has been solved. What was the purpose of the well? To give you water. But once you have discovered water everywhere around you, do you still need the well for the water? That is what Krishna is saying. Krishna is saying those Vedas are meant to help us realize that well of Brahman, that well of realization, self-realization, God-realization. He says, once you have that, why would you need a well now? See, because now you are immersed in divine wisdom. See, that is all Krishna was saying. Krishna was saying the focus, you have to have the right focus. And don't get too attached to a tool. He says the Vedas and all the scriptures, they are a means, they are tools to help you reach that goal. Don't miss out on that. When I was younger, I used to really enjoy watching Bruce Lee movies. So there is one particular movie I still remember very clearly. I was very young, and I think the movie name is Enter the Dragon. And there, Bruce Lee is teaching something to his student. So Bruce Lee points his finger like this, and he says, "What do you see?" And the poor student says, "I see your finger, master." And then Bruce Lee gives him a tight slap, and he says, "Don't focus on the finger and lose on the glory of what it is pointing to." So he says, "I'm actually pointing towards the moon and you're focusing on my finger." See? That is the message Krishna is giving here. He's saying those Vedas, all the scriptures, they are like pointers. They are pointing somewhere. But once the job is done, don't get attached to the pointer. There is I can even give you a very practical, funny example. We have all gone to a restaurant, and in a restaurant, we look at a menu. The menu gives us a very good idea on what all food is available and what food is costing you how much and what choices you have and all of that. But is that your goal? Have you ever seen anybody tell the waiter, can you please pack 4 menus to take home? The menu is there so that you know what food is available, and your goal is the food. Your goal is not the menu, right? That's exactly what Krishna is saying. Those scriptures are all pointing to something that we are supposed to realize, something that we are supposed to experience. Use it for that instead of getting attached to those pointers. That is all Krishna is talking about. Because in the modern world, this teaching is having a very profound implication. It's very important for us. It is more important. This teaching is more important today than it was 5,000 years ago. Because 5,000 years ago, it was only the Vedas and Upanishads and other scriptures that would distract people. But it would only distract those kind of people who already had the mindset to pursue those kind of scriptures, right? But what is happening today? Today is the world of information overload. The world is at your fingertips. A child can pick up a phone and the entire Vedas, Upanishads, whatever they want, it is in their fingertips. Isn't it? So what is the side effect? People spend so much time and energy on thousands of texts and watching countless videos and podcasts and movies and songs and endless. So Krishna is asking, what is your goal? Is your goal to accumulate all of that knowledge? Is that your goal? Or is your goal to understand what is the purpose of that knowledge? So that's why this is very important today. Because today we are also focused on accumulating information. We are focusing a lot on accumulating spiritual knowledge. We are very proud to say that I've listened to 1,000 spiritual videos or I've listened to 500 acharyas. We are busy. But is it worth your time? Is it worth your efforts? Is that the goal? Is the goal to accumulate or is the goal to actually realize? Because if our goal is to realize, one acharya is enough. Isn't it? One lesson is enough. What is more important? Shravan, Manan, Nididhyasan. And it has to help us go closer to the goal. Otherwise, it just becomes a distraction. And all our life we are spending just in gathering information, not in helping that information help us reach the desired destination. That is why this is more important, this lesson. Any questions before we go to the world famous sloka? So now we come to probably the most popular sloka. Okay, we have one question coming from Soumyaji.
So Guruji, let's just say the purpose of me watching sports, I'm just taking an example, is to get entertained. That's the goal, right? So is the meaning like I can get entertained through any of the mediums, but I should not attach myself to that particular sport, or I can get entertained through any other,
No, the question has to be deeper. Why do you want entertainment? What drives your need for entertainment?
Okay.
You see, usually there is a void within you.
Right.
Something is not happy within you. Something is feeling empty within you. And you choose to fill it up with entertainment. Entertainment is an escape. By all means, if you feel like watching, go ahead and watch. Nobody says you should never watch, but you should understand that you should introspect and ask yourself, what makes me spend a few hours sit and indulge in entertainment? Then you will, it is more like an escapism. So that itself is a problem. So we come back to the most popular sloka. As a child, when somebody used to tell me Bhagavad Gita, this was the sloka I knew, the only sloka. But I had absolutely no idea what it meant, and I absolutely had no idea how much of an impact it's going to have on the rest of my life. So that sloka everybody knows. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturburma te sangotsava karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the results of your actions. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, nor be attached to inaction. It's a very powerful sloka. That is the reason today I am covering only 3 slokas. In fact, there are some acharyas who can talk for days on just this one sloka. If we can understand this completely, I think this will transform our relationship with work, our relationship with relations, our relationship with everything. So let us dive deep into this sloka. The first part says, Karmanyevadhikaraste. That means you have a right to actions alone. See, this is a problem with English. I'm not saying there is nothing wrong with English. All I'm saying is, when you try to translate, there are some Sanskrit words or Hindi words, there is no, it's not easy, because the word used here in Sanskrit, it is adhikara. Adhikar doesn't just mean right, because adhikar has multiple layers. When you look at Sanskrit literature, you will see that adhikara has multiple layers of meaning, including rightful domain, jurisdiction, qualified authority, sphere of influence, sacred responsibility. So many words, they all mean adhikara. So let us think of it this way. A judge, for example, let us say a judge in a court, he has or she has an adhikara over the legal proceedings that is happening in their courtroom. But do they have any adhikara on how the people react to their judgment? They don't have an adhikara. Just like that, if you are an artist, you have an adhikara on how well you create your painting, how beautiful you make it. You have an adhikara over that. But do you have an adhikara on how it is appreciated by the people? Do you have an adhikara over what someone thinks about that? What value somebody places on that? So Krishna, with very surgical precision, is explaining what falls within our sphere of control and what falls outside our sphere of control. It's a very scientific, psychological masterpiece here. So he says, Ma phaleshu kadachana. So first he says what you have adhikara over. You have adhikara over your rightful actions. Ma phaleshu kadachana, but never over the fruits. The usage of words is brilliant, because Krishna is using the word kadachana. Kadachana is absolute. It means at no time, under no circumstances, never, ever. Very forceful word. So because Krishna is not suggesting, he's not making a gentle recommendation. He's not saying, I think you cannot. He's saying, I'm very sure. This is the nature of reality, Arjuna. The fruits, which he calls as phala, they are never under your jurisdiction. They are never under your sphere of control. Because the fruits depend on a complex web of karmic actions and reactions, way beyond our comprehension, way beyond our control. The most popular example given by a lot of acharyas is this. They give the example of a seed. They say, let us say your goal is to have a few trees in your backyard. What does it require? It requires you to sow the right seeds. Now let us see what falls within your sphere of control. You select the seeds, you dig the backyard, you sow the seeds, you water it, so on and so forth. You may even have control over what time of the year you want to sow the seed. It's all under your sphere of control. But is that enough? Now can you say, later on when a tree comes there, now can you say that is because I sowed the seed? Now think about how many things are beyond your control. The microorganisms which are within the soil, are they in your control? Let us say suddenly the weather changes. Either way, let us say the weather changes and suddenly there is a drought. Is that under your control? Or the opposite. Let us say there is a cloud burst. Too much water at once. And it washes away your seed. Is that under your control? You are sleeping at night, a squirrel goes and digs up the seed and eats it. Is that under your control? So on and so forth. This is what is called as Daiva. These are all under the sphere of influence of Daiva. Daivam is a common word used to just say, not you, something higher. Unseen hand of the cosmic order. With this knowledge, now if somebody claims ownership, if somebody says, the tree is a fruit of my action, the tree is because I sowed the seed. Now with this knowledge, now you can understand that is not the truth. That is not really a fact. So what makes somebody claim the fruit to be because of their action? That is the ego. That is ahankara. Later on Krishna will say, ahankara vimudatma. He will say, kartaham iti manyate. People with this ahankaram, and he will say vimudatma, not just muda, vimuda atma. They are the kind of ones who, under the influence of ego, they will think that they are the doers. So profound, so beautiful. I'm trying to remember. I think Deepak Chopra is you should search Deepak Chopra, you can Google him. He's somebody I look up to. Extremely brilliant person. He is one of the top medical professionals settled in the USA. He has written many books, he has given many lectures and all. In one lecture, he speaks about an experience. He says that his friend, who was a surgeon, very, very successful surgeon, he's so successful that all the millionaires, they want to go only to him when they are sick, for surgery. He says that he heard this from that surgeon. The surgeon says that, to be very honest, it's been a long time since I consider that it is me who is saving the patients, because he says, many times I have entered an operating theater knowing that it's a very trivial thing. It's a very simple operation. I just have to open one blockage and it's all done. So I go completely confident. I know what needs to be done exactly, but somehow, soon after the operation, the patient passes away and I can't explain why. He says, on the contrary, there are times when I have entered an operating theater knowing that it is pointless to operate on the person, knowing that I just have to do what I have to do. I mean, my job is to operate. That's why I'm in the theater, but I have already given up on the patient, because as a experienced surgeon, I know this is a hopeless case, but after the surgery, somehow the patient survives, and he says that patient has been living for 10 years and now they, call me on every birthday and they tell me, thank you for saving my life. But deep inside, deep within me, I know that it's not me who saved his life. I don't know what saved him. I just have no answer, he says. And that's precisely what Krishna is talking about. Krishna is saying the phala is not in our sphere of control. We can only do what we are supposed to do. But the outcomes is really not in our control. If we understand this, 90%, 95% of the anxieties in our life will just go away. Because our focus will shift. The focus will shift from what to expect. That's not going to be the focus anymore. The focus will be what I'm supposed to do. Isn't it important? Isn't it transformative? So how can we do this? How can we act like this without being attached to the outcome? Because if you see in today's world, if you tell somebody don't be motivated by fruits of action, in the previous session that became a debate. Somebody said it's contradictory. How can we? It makes no sense. How will somebody do action if there is no motivation for the results? You see? So, like when we work for a paycheck. We are focused on the paycheck. Even on the first of the month, we are thinking about end of the month, I'm going to get this paycheck. Or when we study, our focus is on the grades. When we go to the gym to exercise, our focus is on I have to look like a Greek god or Cleopatra, There is always this outcome which is on our mind all the time. The focus is always on what I'm going to get, what is going to be the fruit, what is going to be the phala. And Krishna says that is precisely the problem. So then how? How do you act without that motivation? Is Krishna asking us to be purposeless? Is he asking us to be directionless? That's not his message. His message is a lot more deeper. I will ask you a simple question. Some of you here are mothers. So let us say at a wee hours, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., your child cries. You get up, run to the kitchen and you prepare milk. Why are you doing that? Is there a phala that you are thinking of? Are you now at that time thinking, oh, my child will grow to be a strong kid and then he will support me? I'm very sure. The mother at that instance is thinking of nothing but what needs to be done then. And she's doing it out of love. She's doing it out of compassion. And Krishna says that is how you have to approach all action. That is how you have to approach all work. That is pretty much the message. Was there no passion in that mother? Of course she was full of passion. So Krishna is not saying become dry, become purposeless. His message is very deep and very beautiful. Do the job with the joy of doing it right. There is a neuroscience that also talks about it, where the modern neuroscience it says that our brain, when we are always motivated by external rewards, then our brain operates in what they call seeking mode. Now this is all public domain knowledge, so I'm getting it from there. So what is a seeking mode? The neuroscience says that a seeking mode is characterized by a dopamine driven craving and anxiety. Because we are always slightly ahead of ourselves. We are always peeking into the future. Always it's what is going to happen. Always it's what's the reward. It's always the future. The mind is always there. So the mind is never able to be in the present. And that creates chronic stress and chronic dissatisfaction. This is what modern science is saying. And I am bringing it here just to show how beautifully Krishna has said this 5,000 years ago. In contrast, if instead of the results, if the mind is focused on the satisfaction of the activity itself, like sing because you love singing, dance because you enjoy dancing, cook because you like cooking. That is the message here. Do what you do for the passion, for the joy of doing it. And then the mind gets into, they say, what is called as a flow state. Instead of a seeking mode, it goes into a flow state. And in flow state, you become completely absorbed. You actually lose even time consciousness. Some of you, I don't know, if you are passionate about some hobby, if you are passionate about something, you know what we are talking about. When you are so engrossed in that activity which you enjoy doing, you don't even realize the time passing. And Krishna wants us to be in that state, he says. That is how you should do all actions. Won't it make life more beautiful for us? Because we are no longer doing things just because we want a paycheck or we want a better grade. We are doing things because we love doing it. And then he says, this is the master stroke coming now. Because now what happens? Now we just said that if you act Your action has to be a certain way. Your action cannot be driven by expectations for results. Otherwise, what happens? Bondage. And Krishna is helping us escape this vicious cycle of karma bandhan, that you do actions and it binds you. Krishna says you have to not get into the bondage. Now, smart people, they're going to ask a question. We have many smart people here. Any questions? Okay, I'm sorry, Apurva, Purvaji, I didn't mean it that way, but your hand came. Just a coincidence that you
Yeah,
were
so yeah, no, I raised it after you this, so there's no connection. It was me just very spontaneously raising my hand. And as I'm listening to you speak about how actions should be done without an expectation of outcome and result, isn't this so directly connected to the fact that, because what I'm beginning to, I always used to think karma is about our actions. And I'm growing to learn that karma is not our actions, but it actually starts with our thoughts and our intentions. So if our intentions are also clear, where we are thinking of just doing what we have to do rather than thinking of what are we gaining out of this, isn't this all interconnected?
it is. Definitely. That is why Krishna says your bhava matters. It's your bhava that actually matters. So the same action, two people can perform the exact same action, but one may have completely different experience compared to the other, because one had a totally different bhava or intention as compared to the other. So
And isn't it that it's the thought that actually matters first, because based on that thought, the action will follow, right?
Correct. All we are saying is the intention. We need to train our mind to make sure that for any action, the intention is correct. So if I have to put it in a very concise manner, you should be acting and you should not be reacting. Because when you are in a mindset of just reacting, then it is not with intention. So Krishna wants us to take that pause. That is why he wants us to get into samatvam, a calm mind. Because only a calm mind, all you are talking because you are sitting comfortably somewhere, you are listening to something. Now you are calm. Now all this makes sense. But tomorrow when you are facing the battle of your life, at that time you are reacting. And that is where most of the mistakes happen. Correct? And how do you avoid that? Krishna says, first have this wisdom, have this knowledge on why it is important to have discernment and the right intention, and then practice and train your mind to keep going into that calm state. Keep getting into the samatvam. And how do you do that? What is the practice required for that? Matas parshestu konteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agamapayino. Anitya titiksha. That you have to train yourself. Like right now you are sitting somewhere, you feel a little cold, suddenly do you react? Suddenly do you react, do you run and turn on the heater? Or it is a little warm, suddenly are you running and saying, I need the AC? There's nothing wrong. Enjoy the AC, enjoy the heater. The question is your mindset. Are you reacting? Are you letting your mind? So this is how you start the practice, and eventually you will be able to take care of those dvandvas. So you become nirdvandva. Then you cultivate samatvam, and once you have samatvam, you can do what you are talking about. Makes sense, Purvaji?
Yeah.
Thank you. So you still asked a very genuine question. I appreciate that. But there are people who are very smart. They will say that Krishna said, if you don't do action the right way, then it causes bondage. So then I will choose not to do any action at all. So then no bondage, right? There are many super smart people who come with this. And Krishna is the smartest. So he already has anticipated that there is going to be a smart category of people who are going to say, okay, now I will do no action. So that is why he is concluding his sloka with Mate Sangotsava Akarmani. He is saying, don't be attached to inaction either, Arjuna. So he's kind of, He's targeting those people who say that if action can lead to bondage, why not simply avoid all action? And Krishna immediately is closing that escape route. He's closing that back door. He's saying attachment to inaction is also creating a bondage. So he says, a good try, super smart guy. He's saying, if you are attached to inaction, that will also create bondage. So that is why we said earlier on, doing what is not right is going to create a bondage 100%. But not doing what is right is also going to create a bondage. So there is no escape. That is why earth is called as karma bhumi. We cannot escape from karma. We have to do our karma. That is why Krishna is teaching us how to do karma. Krishna is not saying don't do karma. And this is the foundation of nishkama karma, where Krishna is saying, make sure that the action that you want to perform, the intent for that, make sure it comes from fullness rather than emptiness. Make sure it comes from love rather than need. Make sure it comes from dharma rather than selfishness. Because today what we have is what we call as outcome addiction. Addiction to outcomes. Metrics and KPIs and results, and everybody wants to put a label on what is success, what is not success. Like children, for example, when they study, they think it is their grade, which is everything. If they get a good grade, then they are good kids. If they don't get a good grade, they are not good kids. It is so far from truth, because somebody rightly said, you cannot judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. A fish is good in swimming. Someone else is good in climbing a tree. But in today's world, we seem to have the same measure for everybody. And that only creates anxiety, that creates stress. Just like that, when kids are playing sports, more than enjoying the sports, they have to get a trophy, they have to win a match. The focus is now shifting, and that is unhealthy. That's what Krishna is saying here. Now, an interesting thing I want to ask you all. Just introspect and tell me that the painful memories, all of us have some painful memories. So my question is, if you introspect on some of your painful memories, tell me, is it not true that any painful memory is based on only two things? One, either something unexpected happened, or two, something you expected did not happen. Can there be any third? No. This is the only two category. And what is common between both of them? Expectation. Which is the same as attachment. The attachment to some outcome. You see, attachment to some experience, attachment to something. That is why even Buddha, he says in the Four Noble Truths, he says the cause of all sufferings, he says, is attachment. I like to say this. I like to say that if you look at nature, you can learn a lot from nature. If you look at nature, you will see nishkama karma everywhere. The honeybee is gathering honey. Does it care that somebody else drinks the honey? It does its job. You see a hummingbird, humming beautiful tunes. Does it care whether somebody listens and praises and appreciates? Like that, you will see everything in nature. If you look around, everything in nature is practicing 2.47. It's a great lesson for us. So the question is, if it is everywhere, if the nature does it so beautifully, why is it so hard for humans to then do it? Then the answer is evident, because what is different? The thing that makes us unique is the same thing that binds us. It is our own identity, our own ego. That comes in the way, and that prevents us from practicing this kind of nishkama karma. Because we are so focused on the small I. I want this, I like this, I need this, I don't like this. Entire life, it's about I. we all know how insignificantly small we are. So that small I takes all our bandwidth. Then where is room for the big I? Because what is the truth? The truth is we are not this tiny speck of dust. The truth is we are actually a part of that infinite. That big I, but there is no room for the big I because all our lives we are so focused on the small I. When we release the attachment to outcomes, that is the best way to tame the small I and align us with that big I. I will tell you this sloka, we will keep coming back to it. This one sloka itself, many different perspectives we will get. Because we have to understand that Bhagavad Gita is ultimately a handbook for warriors. We are all warriors here, fighting our battles. Warriors means you don't have to be in the military to be a warrior. You are in the kitchen, it is a battle. You are in the school, it's a battle. You are at your home with your family, that's a battle. And not in a negative way, in a positive way, because you are all struggling. You are all fighting. Fighting what? Fighting your own mind, your own impulses. And 2.47 is providing the code of engaging in your battles and fighting with dignity. Very important. So that brings us to Pragma 3. The Pragma 3 will say that always choose rightful action over inaction and never be attached to the results of your work. Is this making sense? What we have discussed so far? Yes? As you can see, we already spent an hour and I have just covered 3 slokas. So this is why I decided to break this into 2 sessions. But it's a very powerful lesson. I hope it resonates with all of you. So I'm going to leave you with an exercise. It's entirely up to you. You can maybe create your own small groups and do the exercise, or if you want, you can do it individually. As I said, the goal is not to accumulate knowledge. The goal is to make sure that it becomes internalized and you are putting it to use. So maybe I can just forward this to you, but I'll tell you what it is, what the exercise is. The exercise is basically it will involve writing something. So you have to bring to mind any situation in your life, a current situation that is causing you some stress or that is causing you some anxiety. It could be anything. It could be an exam that you have to appear. It could be a difficult relationship, or it could be a project at work, or anything. Think of it. And then you write down this challenge at the top of a blank page. Okay, and then you just draw a line in the middle of the page. So there are 2 columns. And on the left side, you will say, my adhikara. My adhikara means everything that is in my direct control. And you are going to list all of that on the left side. For example, how much I study, how well I study, how much efforts I am putting in, how I communicate, what is my mindset, what is my attitude. Put all of that in the adhikara section. And then on the right side, you will write phala. The phala or outcome. And in that column, you are going to list all the factors that you think which are outside your sphere of control. For example, on the left side, you said, I am going to study hard. That is your adhikara. But can you predict exactly what questions will come in the exam? You can't. So that you will put on the right side. No, that is not your adhikara. Just like that, if it is a personal relationship, how you communicate is on the left side, your adhikara. But how the other person reacts, not in your control. That is under the phala. So once you have that, you can reorient your focus. Now look at the 2 lists. And what Bhagavad Gita says, or what Sri Krishna says, is now, can you make sure that you are not focusing on anything which is on the right side? And can you make sure that all your focus is on the left side? As simple as that. Now, if you can do this consistently, you will be living the teaching of 2.47. And that certainly will transform your life. That will certainly transform your relationships. That is the beautiful message. After you do all of that, you should write a short paragraph that says how your mind is now changing its relationship with the external world. For example, instead of my goal is to get 60%, or instead of my goal is to win a trophy, will you say my goal is to prepare as best as I can, or my goal is to play as well as I can? And you have to write, how does this shift in focus make you feel? What is the feeling? Focus on the feeling. How does it make you feel now? Does it make you feel more empowered? Does it make you feel less anxious? Write it down. Again, jaisa bhava, vaisa anubhava. So however much or efforts you put in, however you approach these teachings, that is how your anubhava is going to be. Feel free, you can all create your own Google Doc, or you can create or write it down and scan it, anything that you are comfortable with, and feel free to share it with me, or you can share it in the group, your own battleground and your own adhikara and phala and how your focus has shifted, and that can inspire the others in the satsang as well. I was planning to do this live as a live exercise, but I think we have taken too much time, so I will make it an offline exercise instead. So before we wrap it up, any other questions from anybody? Questions, doubts, concerns? Anybody is upset? Anybody is confused? Okay.
Namaste, Guruji. And I have 4 questions. I'll ask 2 in the group to respect everybody's time. And the 2 questions, the first question would automatically lead to the second one. So what I am understanding is that the cycle of action and result also has a reaction in between. Like it's like action, reaction, and then a result. Now in corporate settings, when we are under somebody's supervision, we all have bosses, right? So we are designed and trained to build our action to anticipate the reaction, if not the result. So is the suggestion to keep the action simple and then focus on the action rather than the reaction and the result happening due to that action? And how do I, and if the supervisor doesn't know about this Gita stuff, then how do I do it? Yeah.
It is a good question. So there are companies like when I worked in Amazon as a leader there, and they have a very beautiful way of handling this. So there is even a book that is written by the Amazon top leadership. It's called as Working Backwards. So I encourage you to go read that book. The methodology is very simple. So they call it working backwards. Working backwards means, what is the business goal that you are aiming for? They're not talking about tactical goals. They're asking about, whenever you say, I need to do something big, I need to work on a new project or a new feature or whatever, the first question asked is, what is the business goal? You start from there. You work your way backwards. If this is the goal, what are the actions that need to be taken? Okay, you define that. Once you define that, the message is focus now on the action. Don't try to focus now on the goal, because you know what goal the business wants. You have already defined what actions need to be done. Once that is done, now focus on the actions. The goal will automatically take care of itself. Because Jeff Bezos, I don't know if you have watched Jeff Bezos interviews. Jeff Bezos himself says that, yes, we were successful, but it is not that it is all because of what we did. He says, I will actually try to find that exact video where he says that we were insanely lucky. I don't know if you have seen the story of the success of AWS. I know it more intimately because I used to work in AWS previously. So Jeff Bezos says that we were insanely lucky because when we started Amazon Web Services, for 7 years there was no competition. 7 years. He says that makes us insanely lucky, because for 7 years we didn't have to worry about competition. We were only focusing on the quality of our own product. See, but is this under your adhikara? Could Jeff Bezos have controlled the entire market to make sure there is no competition for 7 years? It just happened, right? That is the whole message here. So he was focusing on quality. The outcome automatically happened for him. That is all Krishna is saying. In your company, doesn't matter what your boss says, doesn't matter what goals they want you to set. Set whatever goals they want, but you just need to know what are the rightful actions that you need to do, and you focus on that. If you achieve the goal, good enough. If you don't achieve the goal, you don't have to feel bad. If you achieve double the goal, don't thump your chest and say, now I need to be made a VP of the company. That is the message.
That is exactly the second question. So in corporate life, right, not taking credits, but I would say to increase our visibility, like everything depends on your visibility, right? And to get visibility, you have to take credits. You have to say, see, I did this and this happened. See, I did this and this happened. Like, how to get out of that cycle then? Like,
the answer lies in your question only. So you don't focus on visibility. There is no such thing called visibility. You cannot create visibility. You just do a good job and it gets you the visibility. And you are in the corporate sector, you already know your success does not depend on what you say about yourself. Your success depends on what others say about your work.
Yeah.
And that comes when you actually put your efforts in your work. Instead of, otherwise there is a term in corporate sector. It is called recognition seeking. It is actually looked down upon. It is actually a lesson given to senior leaders in corporate sector, saying the more you chase success, the more distant success becomes. Because then you create a perception that you are a recognition seeker. And recognition seekers seldom get success. So always focus on excellence. The reward will automatically follow. So this teaching applies to corporate sector, it applies to your personal life, it applies everywhere.
So maybe this is a good, I think, guide on creating a corporate culture, right? Because as a human resources professional, that is what exactly I focus on. And if the organizational culture in itself encourages that visibility and stuff like that, so that's a toxic culture that we are building. Like, I'm just saying this because I was in a similar situation in the previous organization, and right now I feel very relieved that I do not even have to think about it. But that's a good lesson. Thank you, Guruji.
You're welcome. Hare Krishna.
So I'd like to share something, Guruji, on this line with regard to corporate culture. I mean, so we are in the Middle East. It's an Islamic country, and we have to respect the culture of the country. But despite that, every year, trust me, I have a Diwali party, and for our office, in the corporate office. I mean, of course, we are Abu Dhabi based, but we have a Dubai big office also, and I do it because I like to do it and get everybody together. No, so the point I was trying to highlight here is what you exactly said it. I just do it because I like to do it, get people together, and the kind of success it is, it's at a different level. Trust me. And it's like, I just have to initiate it. All the doors open. I mean, I work for a bank, and it's one of the biggest banks. What I'm trying to say is you have the systems. You cannot close the bank just because I want to have a Diwali party, or you cannot stop the business happening and all that. Despite all of these challenges, and this question gets asked, a lot of people around me ask but what are you going to get out of it? It's not even in your KPI, and nobody's also watching it. I said I do it because I like to do it. It's not because I want to do a KPI, and it is a big success. Trust me, everybody looks forward to it. So this is an example of you get visible. That's it. I mean, and everything just falls into place. I am an example of this, so do it because I like to. That's it.
Very awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing it. Appreciate that.
Yes.
That's what, somebody, this is Sulataji, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, Guruji, just got reminded, last session you had mentioned the word prahasyasing, that is where when with this awakened intellect, when we go through with this Buddhi Yoga, that grimful struggle becomes joyful transcendence. That prahasyasi word you had stressed upon. This is the same,
Yes.
isn't it? Like, without expectation.
Exactly. Beautiful connecting the dots. Yes. Where Krishna said that when he talks about liberation or freedom, it's not a painful struggle. He's saying it is more like a fun,
Joyful transcendence.
joyful.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a bird which learns to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is liberation, right? But it's joyful. It says, oh, I figured out how to fly. So just like that, Krishna says, I'll teach you how to figure out where is bondage and learn to fly and get free from it. Yeah, thank you. So with that closing statement, I think I can call it a day. I can let you all go. Super grateful, super thankful to all of you for being with us, for supporting us in this journey. And see you all in the next session. And I'm looking forward to hearing about your experiences. You can share it in the group. Okay. Hare Krishna. See you all in the next session.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Guruji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guruji.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guruji.